Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back to the latest edition of Movie Battleground. In tonight's matchup, we have two competitors who I'd put in a very similar category, which would make sense because I've matched them up together. We got Richie Goodacre and we have Shannon Briggs. These are two competitors who I would say are much more on the reserved side of the competitor roster. They're a little quieter overall. They're not as overly aggressive. And they're both in this position where they've had a couple of really good wins and a couple of tough losses, some of which came against competitors that are on that kind of opposite scale aggressor side. And so I think at this point, with where they're at, this is a good matchup for the both of them to sort of test off against somebody who's of a similar type of opponent to see who can pull out the victory. Of course, it's the midpoint of the season, so getting a win here could do a lot to help one of these competitors. So we'll see which one can pull it. That said, we'll go ahead and jump into this match. Introducing first, with a record of 2 wins, 4 defeats, he is Shannon Briggs. Shannon, welcome back to the Movie Battleground, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
Feel good going back. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question for you is obviously, when you first started this, because 2 and 4, you're 6 matches in, this is your 7th match. When you first started this, if my memory serves me correct, you hadn't done very much at all in an on-camera sense in the communities, whether it be trivia or whatever else. You were sort of very new in general. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not an asshole. I have a memory. But with that said, now 6 matches in, you've got a little bit more comfortability, I assume, with it. Is there something that you think along the way you've sort of improved upon, or something that can sort of help you going into tonight's match?
I think a lot of I've helped me improve is like being more prepared, like having having notes and like writing down like what I'm like would plan out to say, then trying to kind of free will it like I did for the first few games that I played on here. I feel like doing that helps me kind of be able to have more confidence and can kind of be able to focus on exactly how like my arguments and stuff. So I think the more practice with doing it and stuff, I just have like I think that I've run into a lot of like good competitors that are very good at very good at being able to like present their arguments and being able to kind of like have that natural charisma to be able to help. I feel like help them a lot with winning the matches as well as their arguments.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well said. Absolutely. Preparation is one of those things where it's like, for some people, the more you have, the more it helps. And then there's that weird opposite end where it's like the more you have, the less it helps. Like, I swear to God, the rounds Jay Burns does the worst on are the ones he actually prepares for. It's this really weird sliding scale that I don't understand personally. But it's always good to be prepared if you need to be. And hopefully you've got what you need tonight, sir. So I'll go ahead and sit you in the back for now and bring in your opponent, coming in with a record of 3 wins, 4 defeats, and 1 knockout. He is Richie Goodacre. Richie, welcome back, sir. How are you feeling?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. It's always I like doing these debates because it tests myself, because I'm not like traditionally like you might see me in streams sort of maybe try to argue my point here and there, but I'm not like totally much of a debater. This is sort of so next this is sort of being out of my comfort zone, but I steadily over the progression over the last few times, you've noticed a bit of improvement. So I'm slowly getting into my groove here. And it's probably like Shannon. It does help to sort of at least sort of be more readily prepared. I'm sort of in the middle there where I'm like I just have sort of bit bullet points to go off, and then sort of free will it a little bit, but as opposed to if I'm too scripted, then it comes across as I feel like I shoot myself in the foot, where it comes across as a bit contrived, or if I just go, hey, I'm just going to free will it, and then I kind of blank it a bit. So if I manage the two things together, it seems to be more beneficial to me. So we'll see if that works tonight. I've seen Shannon debate before. He's pretty good. So I think that's pretty good. So it should be a good battle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were one step ahead of me. I was going to ask you a very similar question, but as always, ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is the seal of having a stand-up here. He is always ready for the asshole that's going to question him. Now let's do with the next questions. With that said, though, we'll bring Shannon in, guys. Are we ready to get going?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points wins the match. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If a competitor picks up the first 3 points in a row, that shall be a victory by knockout. And if at the end of 4 rounds we have a 2-2 tie, God help everybody on the East Coast, because we're going to the blind round and we're going to be here for a while. With that said, the main 4 rounds these guys have had their time to prep for. They have 4 questions. They've had their chance to prep. The way it's going to work is they'll get a 60-second opening argument followed by a 2-minute solo expansion period. There will be a 4-minute open debate where they can go back and forth, trade blows, and get their points in, followed by 60 seconds to wrap up and surmise that argument and get in any last points they need. Following that, I have 3 judges backstage in the form of Zach, Maria, and Chris. They will join us on screen at the end of each round, and based on the competitors' arguments, we'll deliberate who gets the point. With all that said, guys, we ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. And this question is a part of a continuing series of questions. It was a suggestion given to me by one of our competitors, and I liked it so much that I've used it about as many times as I think as you possibly can. So this is, of course, a viewer-submitted question coming to us from a fellow competitor of yours. That is Noah McCausland. And it is the concept of going decade by decade and trying to argue for an overall year within the decade. The question tonight is, what is the worst year in film of the 1990s? You got 10 years there, 10 great years. I feel like, well, okay, that's a facetious statement. There's films in every year that I feel like people love. That's why we have things like the Oscars and good box office hits. But the 90s, I feel like, especially for people in this community, a lot of people were kind of at the right age where the films from the 90s stuck with them through a lot of their life. And there's definitely films from the 90s that stick out to people and stick with their memory and, continue to be some of their favorites. So let's shit all over it, shall we? Let's go ahead and get into it, guys. Behind the scenes, Richie, you are the higher-ranked competitor, so you had your choice of which questions to go first on. If my memory serves me correct, you're going first on 1 and 3. Shannon, you're going to go first on 2 and 4. That sound right to you guys?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go ahead and pull in the timer for you guys. And with that said, Richie, once the timer is pulled in and ready to go, you can begin your first round. Best of luck to both of you guys. Richie, that time starts 3 seconds after you begin speaking, because for some reason it loaded in at 57 seconds.
So when you look at the 90s, I think we tend to romanticize the 90s, and there's obviously a lot of great hits from the 90s. But doing some digging, I think one that stands out as quite a dud for the 90s, and one that has some really bad films in the 90s, and more so than others, is 97. I think 97. I know, maybe 97 people will remember the big historic being Titanic, but I think people it's sort of, it's almost like a distraction from all the other movies that come out here. It's sort of it's just a, I'll get into it, but it's just I don't know if the lack of creativity got in the way here, but just a bastion of unoriginal sequels, and I'll get into it more further time.
And time. All right, Shannon, over to you for your opening minute. What's your pick?
The Shawshank Redemption, The Lion King, Pulp Fiction, Hoop Dream, Speed, Chungking Express, The Crow, Ed Wood, just a few of the movies that show how amazing 1994 was for film. But the flip side on that was that 1994 had by far the worst films that everybody who watched them, starred in them, and directed in them immediately wanted to regret having any participation in them. Films like It's Pat, the movie, possibly the worst film based on an SNL sketch ever, and that's saying something. Franchise worst sequels to such as Beverly Hills Cop 3 and The Next Karate Kid. Pauly Shore, the movie star, still being continually forced on America and in the Army now. And finally, the epitome of worst movies based on video games, Double Dragon and Street Fighter, the movie. And on the next round, I will continue to explain why I believe 1994 was the worst year for film in the 1990s.
All right, that is time. I jumped the timer back instead of hitting pause like the pro I am. So at this point, I'll take a minute to say a shout out to all the people who have been guest hosting the show in a period where I've been busier, because you guys probably aren't fucking up like this. All right, with that said, Richie, back over to you. You got 2 minutes on the clock now. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So, like I brought up before, there's just a lack of creativity in '97. Now, like it just seems like, okay, let's just pump these movies out that sequels. Let's just like completely just tank a franchise. For example, Speed 2 Cruise Control came out in '97. What do we need? A fast bus? Oh no, we'll do a cruise ship. That'll do. Yeah, it's now become a punchline. Alien Resurrection, one of the worst in the Alien franchise up to that point. Free Willy 3. It's just like it just seems like a very just a dud of creativity. And not only for it has some duds. Like you mentioned, like It's Pat. All right, I just feel like people. Yeah, while that is a dud, I feel like people forget about that movie. The people, and then and you go, oh yeah, say something. I feel like a lot of the SNL movies fall under guilty pleasure, like Coneheads and stuff like that. So I think I think SNL movies are generally pretty good, but but that being a dud, it's just forgettable. And then a lot of the other movies you mentioned are sort of guilty pleasure. Sure, like I think they're built on like a guilty pleasure vibe, like Street Fighter, and and all that kind of thing. So I just think like 1997, I think and all those good movies in '94 people do remember '94 for having all those brilliant movies. 1997 just has you got Titanic, which stands head and above like everything else, and it's like and then there's like everything else, and I just feel like that I just feel like and people forget that there's so much like worse stuff that has come out because they remember all this the age of the big blockbuster. This huge film success that came out in '97. So 97 is worse than '94.
And time. All right, Shannon, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes.
Now, 1997, I would agree has some stinkers. I mean, he hasn't brought up yet, but I mean, like a lot of people bring up like Batman and Robin or Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But I feel like them movies can be still enjoyed with like a group of friends and or like alcohol and marijuana enhancement. There's not enough weed in the world to make Car 54. Where are you? Funny, like the epitome of like the 90s trying to like make every sitcom from the 50s and 60s like a movie and stuff, and especially like the Flintstones, like that monstrosity as far as like completely like ruin people's goodwill with the cartoon. The Next Karate Kid is so bad that Cobra Kai hasn't even referenced it yet, and it references everything Karate Kid. You have On Daily Ground with Steven Seagal like burn away any action movie cred he had built up at that time. My Father the Hero. Literally, a plot is about a father who pretends to be his daughter's lover so she can hook up with a boy. My skin is crying as the words are coming out of my mouth saying what that movie's about. North, a Rob Reiner film that basically ruined his career and made audiences turn against a baby Elijah Wood. And then you have the epitome of the sleazy of erotic thriller like duds with Color of Night, in which Bruce Willis he put his stamp on the erotic thriller, and guess what? You get to see a glimpse of a bald-headed Bruce Willis, but not the one we got used to after the millennium. If you can catch my drift, and trust me, I wish I could undo my eyes from seeing that as well. But yeah, it just feels like like what again, like you said, with like the Speed 2, at least that has a Willem Dafoe performance that is like he is fully committed in. And I feel like Alien Resurrection again is a kind of underrated movie. It's got a lot of problems, but it also like takes big swings too.
And time. All right. We're going to go ahead and jump into the 4-minute open discussion here. Guys, as always, be sure not to step over each other too much. Give the competitors a chance to speak before you jump in. But at this point, you guys know how this works. With that said, the 4 minutes starts back up once the first person speaks.
The majority of those movies that you brought up, I just feel like you could put that into like a film title generator, and I wouldn't. I had never even I hadn't even heard it. Like they sort of don't I. Yeah. I mean that probably goes into a sense of how much of a box office or critical bomb they were, but like that, I don't think they also goes to my argument whether they don't kind of enter like someone's mind as like particularly memorable or particularly bad. They're just sort of there. Whereas like 1987 had these took these beloved sort of franchises and then kind of took any goodwill they had and then kind of crushed them. So I think that 1987 is remembered more sort of poorly for that, whereas like any any sort of random sort of projects that didn't get off the ground well would. So yeah, that's why I think 97 stands out, because it tries to do a cash grab on.
But Richie, I feel like the most indictment for a bad movie is it being completely forgotten. Whereas, like, there's like bad movies that we can go back that have come back and kind of had like a cult following, even if we can realize that. I think it's damning for a bad movie year that you have so many movies that people want to forget. Like, I mean, it's Pat. I mean, like it's Pat, and then like Beverly Hills Cop 3. Like nobody and like the East saying like these big money like franchises. Also like the Next Karate Kid, like again a beloved like franchise with the Karate Kid films, and that like completely ruined it and stuff. It feels like it was just an indictment how like retreads and like how we like hubris with like the people behind them.
Yeah, but I like for example, you mentioned Batman and Robin, right? Like Batman and Robin, it's a terrible while that's more memorable and it's like it gets to play for some people, it is still out of 9 to 10 people, it's still probably one of the worst Batman films ever made. I think because of how like just terrible they treated the source material. I think that's just pisses away any goodwill. I think I can't really defend like the Karate Kid or anything like that, but I just think there's just way more of that. If you go down the list, there's way more of like just like kind of treating like treating the franchise like just like creating pissing goodwill of fans on franchises, and then in 97 there is 94.
But also you have like films like Junior too that completely completely like squandered the goodwill that Arnold Schwarzenegger had made up as far as like being a comedic like actor with early stuff like Killing a Car. Like it's like the premise of like him. Even then people were like going like, what the heck is he doing? And look, we like even then we can't really enjoy it. We think like, wow, what a like completely colossally like bad intention by the bad idea that was like to have like comedy from Arnold Schwarzenegger being like pregnant and like then I feel like, and also like Batman and Robin again, I feel like people it's kind of come around where it was like I think people can like, at least interpret what Joel Schumacher was trying to do with that film. It doesn't work in a lot of ways, but I mean I think compared to the darkness of like Zack Snyder like brought to like Batman v Superman, I think a lot of people kind of look back at it as like kind of like it was like kind of needed a levity that the Batman films never really got.
I appreciate what they're trying to do with Junior, because I'm not saying that Danny DeVito had good chemistry. So yeah, I think 97 still stands as the worst.
And time. All right, you guys got 1 minute left on the clock each to wrap this up. Richie, we'll go back to you first, so the timer starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah. I just think there's more examples of 97 being like Hollywood being like just barren of ideas, just trying to continue a franchise even though they didn't have, just trying to milk money out of a franchise even though they didn't have much creativity going on. And like even the ones that sort of are more are more original in 94, I appreciate the effort. Like like I'll expand on like Junior, but they want to expand on the chemistry between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. You'd be silly not to capitalize on that, because that Twins was great. So they swung and missed, but I just think 1997 is a perfect microcosm of the fact that and that we would see it later on in like present day as this remakes, sequels, retreads of trying to recapture sort of glory and failing. 1994 is just forgettable, but 1997 I think is just has more bad will. So 97's.
All right, and then Shannon, back over to you. Final minute of the round.
Yeah, 1997 was a bad year for film. I agree too, but however, I feel like there are bad movies that have stood the test of time and are enjoyably bad. Like we talked about, like Batman and Robin, like the prime example. But and like Speed 2, I feel like people still enjoy. I mean, have gone back to like Willem Dafoe's like performance and his performance too. But tell me, what 1994 movies would you want to watch once, let alone again? These films have been buried by time and good taste for a reason. Also, like this was like the 6th Police Academy movie, Mission to Moscow. That has anybody want to go back to the Police Academy movies anytime soon? And that great franchise, they can't be even enjoyed ironically. If a bad movie can't be enjoyed like that, then that tells you how horrible 1994 was for bad movies. 1997 might have been bad, but at least there's bad movies that you can remember to enjoy. Like, I mean, Mortal Kombat Annihilation is, I mean, it's an enjoyable bad movie. You can sit down. It's the movie. You can't sit down and like with friends and enjoy it. It's bad taste.
And time. All right, guys. Good start to the game. Good start. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back and bring the judges forward for their decisions here. Nothing really to fact check, but it looks like all judges are ready to go pretty much anyways. So I'll go ahead and start with you, Zach. What gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I went with Richie for this one, and he brought up two things like multiple times that I feel like really like got me on his side. It was more that in 1997, Hollywood was kind of barren of ideas, about a lot of lack of goodwill, but also that the movies in 1994 were kind of seen now as kind of like guilty pleasure movies. So that's why I went with Richie for my vote.
Okay. Maria, down to you. Who gets your vote? And you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
But you're voting for Richie, I'm presuming, because you pointed towards
Yeah, to Richie. I listened to the argument, but I disagree about 1994 being a bad year for movies. I mean, Lion King, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank. I don't think so. 97, he did a good job of denigrating it. It had a run of pretty bad ones, so that's why Richie got my vote.
Okay. All right, judges, thank you guys. We'll go ahead and put you guys in the back, and we will go ahead and jump into question number 2 here as we'll bring the competitors back in. Question number 2, we're going to jump into the career of somebody. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. If an actor or director's career is so odd that I have to deep study their filmography in order to figure out what actually applies based on the rules of the show and what doesn't, It's a unique one, but I always love doing it. I've done it for Chris Tucker because I was scared he genuinely didn't have enough movies. I've done it for, I believe the director's name was Takashi Miike, a Japanese director. Thanks, Alan, for bringing that one in. And now we got the man, Mr. Bruce Campbell. The question is, what is the best Bruce Campbell film released in the 2000s? Of course, that is the year 2000 through 2009. Not his most prolific decade, but aside from the cameos in Spider-Man, which obviously weren't eligible, they're cameos. That's a real, I mean, someone could have tried, but it's a real cheap way to sort of shove them in there. I think this is a decade where, despite the fact that he's not prolific, the stuff that he's in is remembered. I think people remember his older films as a collective of that was Bruce Campbell's heyday, but these specific films I still hear people talk about. Hell, I'll be completely honest. I asked this question before to a match that got canceled. Never went through, and these were the exact two answers that were given in that match as well. So I think these films stand out individually because they're in a decade where there's not as much work. That said, they're both enjoyable as hell, so let's see who can bring this one out. Shannon, you're up first this time around, so I'll go ahead and give you the timer, and it'll start once you begin speaking.
Bruce Campbell is a legitimate B-movie legend now, but in the early 2000s, he was still considered the Evil Dead guy, and most mainstream audiences didn't believe that he had the range to move away from that persona. However, in 2002, Campbell was able to flesh out and show how great that range could be with Bubba Hotep. On its surface, Bubba Hotep has a ridiculous premise. An elderly Elvis Presley fighting a mummy that's terrorizing the nursing home he's resigned to die in. But Bubba Hotep is elevated considerably by Phantasm director Don Coscarelli, writer Joel R. Lansdale, and of course, Campbell's soulful, funny, and heartbreaking performance as Elvis. And I feel like this film helped show how great how capable Campbell could be as a lead actor if given the right role and given something that could keep people from this stabbing at him as the Evil Dead guy with Sam Raimi when he's only talent. And I will continue to explain more in the next round.
All right, that is time. Richie, over to you. What's your pick?
Yeah, so given the task of coming out with a great Bruce Campbell movie that's not Evil Dead, it can be tough. But then you realize, hey, Sky High exists, and so I'm going with Sky High. This movie, underrated as hell. I think it should have got a sequel, and Bruce Campbell is. Contribution to it can't be understated. He's great as the gym teacher, as is it Bumkowski? There's even a joke. There's even a joke in there. He's amazing. Yeah, Tommy Bumkowski, Coach Boomer. He's great. And I love it. He can release sonic booms from his vocal cords, and he's having a lot of fun. And that's what I want my Bruce Campbell, to have a lot of fun. I'll expand it more in my time, but yeah, I like fun Bruce Campbell.
And time. All right. Shannon, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
Sky High might have had 34 times the budget of Bubba Hotep, but Bubba Hotep has amazing effects and makeup courtesy of K&B Effects. The titular mummy has a disgusting but unique look compared to other mummy creature designs of that time. They do a terrific job of making Campbell look like an elderly Elvis. You really can believe that. Yeah, it's that he's playing an elderly man, even though he was, I think, in his early 40s. Campbell has a monologue in this Bubble Tip about the loss and regret of not seeing his daughter Lisa Marie that will make you believe that Campbell should have been nominated for Best Actor as Elvis long before Austin Butler was. Joel R. Lansdale, who has written so many critically acclaimed short stories in the horror genre, gave Campbell so much great dialogue in the most insane situations. Sky High, I like it and stuff, but I think it's a movie with a mediocre script that was elevated by a great supporting cast. The 2000s tried to make Michael Ingarano the lead of Sky High. It was like this, and Forbidden Kingdom tried to make him like a lead actor, and it never really took. And frankly, him and every time him and the other like teen superheroes show up, I feel like the movie kind of loses me whenever it's not just have Kurt Russell and all these other like funny supporting characters. You give Mary Elizabeth Winston one of like her like early roles, but it's a one-note villain. Seeing Sky High made me realize that Disney did it was a much better insight on superheroes with Pixar with The Incredibles that came out a year before, and also the effects in Sky High I feel like have dated more than Bubble Hotep has. It feels like more like Spy Kids for superheroes. It's a copy of a dated premise.
All right, that is time. Richie, back over to you for your 2 minutes when ready.
I just feel like Bubba Hotep. When watching it, I felt like it's a movie that, while I enjoyed it, doesn't know what it wants to be. I was like, okay, yeah, like while I understand, like Bruce Campbell's performance is great. I was like, okay, am I meant to? Like, is it like a drama? Is it a horror comedy? And it tries to blend so many things where I think its identity gets lost, or I'm just like, yeah, it gets confused as to what its identity is supposed to be. I totally get what Sky High is going for, and yeah, you can compare it to The Incredibles, but yeah, I just think Bruce. I think Bruce Campbell works as more, especially later. Bruce Campbell works as more supporting kind of character, and this fun sort of character. And I think he does great as Coach. But they even said that the supporting cast works better than the main cast, and I agree. And part of the supporting cast is Bruce Campbell, and I think he works really well. I think he's having a lot of fun. I don't know. You could say that the effects maybe don't hold up, but I think they hold up more. I honestly do think they hold up more than Hotep. But you could say that about a lot of movies from that time, because obviously technology has advanced to the point where it's like that some of these effects don't look as good comparatively. But I just think he's I just think he's like I don't know. I just think he's overall better in this movie, and it's just a better movie overall. I know what I'm getting with Sky High. It's just a fun family-filled adventure where I guess with Bubba Hotep, it's supposed to be like this acting showcase, but it's like supposed to be like this horror movie, it's supposed to be this drama, like an aging Elvis. It's like I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting, and at least with Sky High, I just think it's more fun for me to watch. So yeah.
All right, that is going to be time there. We're going to go ahead and jump into the 4-minute open discussion period. Time starts when the first competitor speaks.
Well, I feel like that you're like Sky High kind of shows like how limited Hollywood was kind of put like Bruce Campbell like in the box. Like we can only give you like maybe like a total of like a minute of screen time and try and make it work or whatever. And he does. But I feel like Bubba Hotep, like, and you were talking about it really gives him more like stretch out as an actor. And also that you were saying about not knowing its tone. I feel like it knows its tone because like with Don Coscarelli, he did a Phantasm, and then like movies shift tone as well. And like Joe R. Lansdale, he's like, again, he did like Happy Leonard TV show that mixes like noir but also like comedy and like action as well. Like he's like, again, it's real up to depth with the like genre bending, and I don't even get off of that.
I don't have any issue with the idea of like genre bending or anything like that. I just and the one he cited, Phantasm. I think that works well. I just think here it's just like it's too much of one and then not enough the other, and then they're trying to make, then all of a sudden they try to make you like, oh, okay, now I'm watching a full on drama movie. Oh, now I'm watching, so it's just like there's no they haven't that I don't know, they haven't worked out the kind of the compromise between the two things, where it's just like the identity gets lost for me. I think I think that other movies decided to do a lot better, and I understand maybe what he was going for. I just don't think it hit the mark here, whereas the other ones did, and I think it's Sky High. Yeah, you could cite you could cite a lot of other ones, but I just think it's like the better, like, fun overall movie, and you could make an argument that you could give Bruce Campbell bigger roles, and that aren't Ash, but he brings it to whatever role he gets, whether it be small, whether it be with whatever scale it is, and I think that can't be understated, and I think that at the end of the day, even though it's a small cameo, I think it's more memorable than what we did in Bubba Hotep.
It is memorable. I just feel like the problem with like Sky High is like all the teen stuff. Like you brought about Bruce Campbell and about all these like supporting actors, but like as far as like the actual main characters of this movie, I feel like that's the biggest weakness and you can make on Sky High is like they do not come up to the challenge, and ones that are talented, like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, are like wasted with like a one-up role that looking back, she could do so much more with that. You could do some more complexity with these teen characters, but instead there's more of like the ciphers for us to just kind of the audience to go through, but not to like care about. Like you're more interested in Kurt Russell and Kelly Preston and that one, but then you don't. But that doesn't work with the main characters, and that's kind of the problem of your film if you can't at least enjoy being around your main characters and not be obnoxious teens or whatever to for most of it, and kind of you can say learning that it was owing them all the whole time to save their parents and stuff. It's again, Incredibles did the same premise a lot better, and I feel like it's the more of a better blueprint as far as how you can handle with a deconstruction of the superheroes as far as parents and kids.
I don't know if I just sort of whittle it down to being the characters just being obnoxious teens. Yeah, I do think I do think obviously out of all of them, Mary Elizabeth Winstead brings it the best, but I do think Michael Angelo does do all right. Yeah, he's not, obviously they work out, he's not a leading guy, but I think he brings it, and sorry.
No, you're good. All right. There may have been a bit of lag on my end. My computer just did lag. So with that said, we are going to go into the final minute here. Shannon, you're back up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Bubba Hotep I feel like it's one of the most unique horror films that's able to kind of it's able to convey different tones and different kind of genres with it that you can go from having a serious moment with Elvis Presley but also are you dealing with a mummy that sucks souls of the elderly through their assholes. That's a ridiculous concept, but it makes it it's Don Coscarelli and Joel Larson makes it you actually care about these characters. And the same time, Elvis is the only person that you can save him. It's just a crazy premise, but it makes it work. It's a cult. Bubblecast is a cult classic because it's funny, gory, and heartfelt. Bruce Campbell was a glorified cameo in Sky High. That's what Hollywood movies thought he was only good for in the 2000s. But Bubba Hotep showed that Campbell could play someone other than Ash Williams and be certified horror legend outside of the Evil Dead. Whereas Sky High, again, it's a mediocre script with a bit of supporting characters with a bad teenage cast.
And time. All right. And then Richie, back over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I mean, Bubba Hotep came out before Sky High, so I feel like if he made as much of a splash, he would be getting those sort of roles. I just think he kind of he sinks his teeth into whatever roles he gets. So whether I'm not saying he can't be a lead role guy, but I think he in this role of this minimized role he has, I think he stands out, and I think that's something to sniff at. I think he's great in this role. And I just think it overall it is, like Bob said, it is a cult film, and there's reason people clamoring for a sequel. And I think and I think who say he won't have a big I just think he is one of the highlights of a film that has, when he's one of the highlights of a film that has this like gargantuan car. So that says a lot. And I just think, and at least Sky High knows what it is. It's a stupid human movie, I like Incredibles. Whereas I think Battle Hotep has an identity crisis. So yeah.
And time. All right. We'll go ahead and sit you guys in the back. We'll bring the judges in for the deliberation here. In terms of fact checking and or just kind of hitting on things that were mentioned in the round. First off, yes, Bruce Campbell's name could be seen, probably is most likely a reference to the Evil Dead films. Tommy Boomowski, or Coach Boomer. The hero name is Sonic Boom. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, basically everything except a boomstick, because that's probably a lawsuit waiting to happen. But aside from that, there's a lot of references there. Because his name was said more than once, but it is a weird name, and there was definitely a bit of a way of figuring out how to say it. The star of Sky High is Michael Angarano. That is how his name is said. I looked it up just to be certain. Another thing with Sky High was talked about with the supporting cast. While Angarano's career didn't exactly take off in the highest of ways, the film supporting cast, aside from the famous people that were put in the film, all found success. Obviously, Daniel Pennebaker went on to be one of the stars of The Flash for its 9 seasons and has found success through that angle. Mary Elizabeth Winstead has gone on to be the star be a star in numerous hit films. Personal favorite of mine, 10 Cloverfield Lane. And probably the most surprising of them is one of the other smaller supporting characters in the film, Nicholas Braun, who played a bleach blonde sidekick in the film, went on to be I believe now, Emmy-nominated star of Succession. So, careers can turn around. They can go from being in Disney films to being in HBO. And yes, for anybody who just didn't believe that film exists, Bubba Hotep is absolutely about Elvis Presley fighting mummies. And I don't remember if it was said or not, but because I looked it up and it's here, the film also features a black man who claims to be John F. Kennedy. This movie is just as weird as it sounds, and it's awesome. Check it out. With that said, Maria, I'll go up to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Richie gets my vote. Sky High. He made a lot of good points about Sky High. I love Bubba Hotep, but I wouldn't take my grandkids to see that. Doing things with your behind to make things happen, that's really not a family-friendly outlook. But Bruce Campbell, I think he just excels. He was here once for a book signing, and he was a great guy. Talked about his career a little bit. He's done a lot, and I think he did an outstanding job in Sky High. But I know the Elvis thing is great, but I like Sky High better, and I thought Richie did a better argument.
All right. Chris, down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, this was an interesting debate. As much as I like Sky High, and I do have a seen other one, but I went in the end based on the argument itself with Shannon. I just think he just brought up everything about the makeup, the direction, that Bruce Campbell actually gave a performance that was a glorified cameo to knock against Sky High with the teen acting, the lack of special effect that was that incredible knockoff. Just I felt more I heard from him than Richie. Yeah.
All right. And then, Zach, over to you for the tie-breaking vote.
I also went with Shannon more because I felt like he brought more to his argument. He brought up how this movie was able to show his range more instead of being just a supporting character. He did bring up the makeup, but also he was able to do counters against Sky High, saying that you did kind of waste the talent a little bit, but also how it made you more interested in the supporting characters, the adult characters, more than the actual teens in the movie. So for that, I went with Shannon.
All right. Judges, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and set you in the back, and we will jump into question number 3 here. And question number 3, we're going to be focusing on the DC universe, a universe that is currently in well, I was going to say reset mode, but I guess it's in box office failure mode before it goes to reset mode. It's yet to be seen, at least at the time of recording, because I forget exactly when this uploads. The Blue Beetle, not looking too great for Blue Beetle. Maybe it'll be the surprise hit of the summer, but not looking too good right now, considering its final piece of marketing, aside from maybe a TV spot, came out a month before the movie. That's not good. Aquaman, everybody excited to see Amber Heard back on the screen. And I guess the other stuff in that film. DC's a universe in need of a hard reset, which it's going to get. But that means every time you move on from something, there's always lost potential. And DC in and of itself is a franchise, an entity that's had multiple franchises within franchises, multiple versions of the same characters, but also more so than Marvel, these weird little offshoots and things that like you do it once, and a lot of them don't succeed box office wise because most people just don't know what to make of what comes out of these weird things. But you get some great films, be it like with the core DC characters. I mean, some of the great Batman films that exist, or you look at something like Road to Perdition, which is a DC film that's just a really well-made movie that you wouldn't even think is a DC film. And so that leads us to the question, because we're not getting sequels to most of what's existing now in DC, what one-off DC film should have gotten a sequel? And this is obviously, I'm referencing the DCEU and the setup, but this is all of DC. Pick something from the history of DC that never got a sequel. What should it have been? Richie, you are up first with this one, sir. So I'll go ahead and throw the timer over to you. It'll start ticking when you begin speaking.
Yeah, so this one is a bit of a sore point because it's a movie I really came around to. The first time I watched it, well, I didn't really like it, but yeah, now I've really come around to it. I really loved it, and we're teasing of a sequel for a long time, and it should have happened. I'm going Man of Steel. It should have got a sequel, and Man of Steel is just a perfect character assessment of it. Not only made you care about Superman and how late Superman was, made you care about Clark Kent and how complex of a character he was. Just visually it was great. I think Zack Snyder really got the source material, and I think due to whatever studio politics, I just think you're never going to get that. And even up till like last year we thought we're going to get that, and I think we're just robbed of that. And I think it's a shame. So I think that is the one DC film that should have got a sequel among the rest of them. I think it's a shame. We should get Man of Steel too.
And time. All right, Shannon, down to you, sir, for your opening minute.
There have been many films of based on DC comics that have become one-offs. A lot of them's like poor box office, but also mainly because a lot of them weren't very good, unfortunately. But there's one DC movie that I feel was destined to be that seemed that it was destined to be a one-off because it came out too early to be fully embraced. That film, 2010's The Losers, was based on a vertical offshoot from the DC line that produced some of the most innovative and creative mature comic books ever made. Lucia came out right before the action film genre had a huge renaissance with films such as Taken, The Raid, and John Wick, and had a tremendous cast which featured up-and-coming stars such as Zoe Saldana and Chris Evans. You may have heard of them now. And had a tremendous cast which featured which also had seasoned character actors at the time, mostly known for TV such as Idris Elba and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Again, now like well-known names now. So why not a great movie by any means? It left the door open for a sequel.
And time. All right, so it is Man of Steel versus The Losers. Richie, back over to you, sir. You got 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
I just believe Man of Steel, with the plethora of like material you could choose from, and just the unexplored universe. It is just and just how interesting the case study that Zack Snyder made for Clark Kent and Superman, and how it's that type of a character assessment is not something we haven't seen before, and it's just a shame we're not going to get something like that. And with with the Losers, it's a fun, cute, like one-off film. But like you said, I think it's destined to be a one-off film. I think they were, yeah, I think it's all right. It just feels like like a very like the comic books might be all right, but it feels just like a kind of watered down sort of it's like Suicide Squad almost. It's not, and I just don't like it's entertaining enough, but I don't think that there's much clamoring there for a sequel. I know it left it open for a sequel. I don't think, but I don't see it doing well. But whereas there's so much clamoring for a sequel. I think Henry Cavill's perfect Superman. I think he got screwed. I think like there's so much there. Whereas I think Losers, yeah, like if it got a sequel, yeah, like people wouldn't be here nor there with it. Yeah, like the characters are good. I mean, even like like I mean, you have like a finite opportunity to do it. Like I feel like you mentioned Zoe Saldana. Chris Evans, they're all gone up to sort of different things in the sort of comic book land. So it sort of just confused things and muddy up the waters a bit. So and Man of Steel is just, I just think it is just one of the more sought after sequels that we're never going to get, and that's a shame.
All right, that is time. Shannon, back over to you.
I feel like the Losers. I mean, like I said, the original, like I said, had could be improved upon. Like I feel like with a better director and a better screenplay, that I mean, like a sequel would automatically have better actions with action set pieces would knock the door come up, especially this right after films like this Taken and stuff. And it's like basically it's R-rated. It could be an R-rated version of the A-Team. Which I mean, you could have multiple ideas and stories about a A-Team special force team betrayed and trying to find the help out people, but also trying to find out to get back to people who betrayed them. You could get I mean, they could have action directors like Timo Giganto, Gareth Evans, Matthew Vaughn could have been a great addition to add the action sequences that people would have been memorable. Like I said, the problem with Man of Steel 2 is we basically had that with Batman v Superman. I know that's not the version of Superman most people were clamoring for, but that was the version Zack Snyder wanted and laid the seeds for in Man of Steel. And it will for Henry Cavill's version of Superman will be forward linked with that film and Justice League. Again, I feel I think Man of Steel might have been lying in the bottle as far as Zack Snyder and Henry Cavill working together, because I feel afterwards Zack Snyder showed that he was far more interested in making a Batman movie than he ever was actually making a Superman movie. At least with Batman v Superman, it seemed it's more focused on Batman than it was about Superman. And again, whereas the Losers, I feel again, it's you got with Idris Elba, Evans, and Saldana, they all proved that they would want that they love comic book movies. They've all appeared later on in the MCU, but again, I feel you could still bring them back. They all have the love and camaraderie. I feel works more with it than just another Man of Steel film will.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer starts when the first competitor speaks.
The Batman v Superman argument, while yes, could argue it focus more on Batman, but I wouldn't put that all down to Zack Snyder. I don't know if you've seen there is a reason why they had to have bring out a proper cut, not another cut of that film. It's because there was studio meddling. I think there was more that it was a studio kind of it was a studio note that they wanted more Batman. I think Man of Steel 2 would allow them to sort of more explore that character, and you'd get more of that layered Superman. And I think Zack Snyder does get it, but because with studio meddling, he had to focus on all these other things, and he couldn't allow Superman character to breathe and sort of tell its own story. So I
I feel like just like Zack Snyder and Reynolds just wants to do directors because he did director cut of Watchmen too, and I feel like that one was. I mean, again, like like I feel like it was. He had an original vision with the original. I think he just added more stuff, but where I feel like Batman v Superman again added stuff like he didn't want on that one or whatever. But then again, it's and just make it more R-rated and stuff was more basically the thing with that, as far as like with the director's cut with that. It didn't like again. I don't think it doesn't stop the argument that he was more focused on Batman in that film and more about like that character, and like Superman is just like all of a sudden he's like kind of like an asshole. And like wasn't like I mean I feel like he's laid him seeds and kind of like I mean and it's just and he doesn't how much he cares more about Batman than he filmed in a Superman film.
Well, this could be explained with another sequel, but we're not gonna again we're not gonna get that, and that idea is like okay that this whole idea would be kind of explained, but now it's sort of and then there's a reason that he had to. I put down studio man thing that he has to sort of keep releasing these extended cuts because it's like I feel like Zack Snyder's a certain type of director where studio heads just don't get, so he has to sort of release these cuts where kind of fill in gaps, and I do, but I feel like he would explain all that stuff in Man of Steel 2, which we were set to get, but then James Gunn brought in his vision, and that sort of rendered it obsolete. But yeah, like again, I'm not sort of talking about more on Man of Steel, not the losers. I just think that there is more. The very conversation kind of points to my thing that there's more interest in Man of Steel than the losers. I think the losers is a fun kind of isolated film where it's like cool to see these people team up, but it's like it's a fun one-off movie. That it would be cool to make a sequel, but like you said, the first one was okay, and it could improve upon it. But I feel like it doesn't have as much goodwill as Man of Steel does, where you've gone from an okay film to a sequel. People I think maybe you wouldn't see as much box office return to a sequel.
But I feel like making the improvement on like an original, like you said, I feel like that it's kind of the goal of a sequel to improve on the original, and that whereas I feel like again. Like they're already like kind of like I think they figured out like doing like the whole like between like after Superman becomes like him that the TV route works better with like Superman and Lois, or possibly they're trying to do something with Superman Legacy. Possibly might be something that's kind of like a bridge between that. That's a little bit more like that works more with like everybody kind of like getting a fair shake as far as more of a Lois Lane as far as that. But I feel like with Zack Snyder, like again, he felt like he wasn't interested in Lois Lane. He wasn't interested in like the Superman like Clark Kent part either.
And time. All right, we're gonna go into the 1 minute closings. Richie, you're up first. Timer starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah. So throughout the debate, I haven't heard. I've sort of heard why, more so why Man of Steel shouldn't have got a sequel as opposed to why the losers should. I don't think I don't think losers should get it. I don't think losers. I think losers is fine on its own. I think there's there's a lot of material to go with, but there's not the hype for it. I think Man of Steel, there's perfect hype for it. There's perfectly unanswered questions, and that's just at the end of the day, it's a shame that you could all these questions that Shannon had, you could answer them in a big budget film, and we're going to get it until DC had to change the direction, and James Gunn came in and was like, no, this is my direction. And I just feel like that's a big shame because Henry Cavill was so good at Superman. I think he'll still go down as one of the best Superman. And I think, I think people come around to the Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I think it's brilliant.
And time. All right. And then Shannon, back over to you. Final minute.
Okay, yeah, I will focus on why losers. Yeah, should have a sequel because it ends like the main baddie in it that was played by Jason Patrick, playing Karen Max, like he gets away. Like and like again, it's like you be wanted like at the end, like okay, like you can branch onto that story. Like they're like trying to find Max, trying to go back and trying to like then he's gonna have like a setup level of them like trying to go back. They have to get through or whatever to like to find out like to get back to him and stuff with that. And like again, you have like I feel like with Alba Evans and Saldana, they have like proved their action shots have only improved, and I feel like they would contribute more to great action scenes. And you get a great director like Matthew Vaughn or Timo John or Gareth Evans, and you can like have like a John Wick level of like several different sequels to it that can add on to the characters and the story to it. Whereas like Man of Steel, again, it's Secretary, this doesn't work.
And time. All right, guys, we'll go ahead and sit you in the back. We'll bring the judges in here. Nothing really to fact check there. Everything pretty much clean. So we'll just go ahead and go straight to Chris on this. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
This is tough. I do love both of these movies. It was interesting back and forth. I went back and forth in my head. But strangely enough, and Richie did kind of point out, I heard a lot more from Richie of why Man of Steel 2 could work. I think Shannon right here, he thought I was great. I barely heard enough about the loser to itself. I think Richie pointing out, the need that people do want to see him come back, and like the need for Man of Steel 2. However, like there's barely any interest in loser, and pointing out, that the more to be done with Superman and stuff that set up. Richie got my point in the end.
Okay, Zach, down to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
I'm actually going the opposite way. I'm going Shannon more because of two things. One, his big knock against Richie was that Batman vs. Superman is kind of the sequel to Man of Steel, so you kind of have to factor that in. But also, he was able to describe kind of what his sequel would be. He was describing like the A-team of the DC, and I feel like with describing that, I feel like he better showed what his sequel could be.
Okay, so we are 1-1 once again, which means Maria, I'll go over to you for the tie-breaking vote. Who gets it? All right, and you are muted once again, but I'm going to assume the vote was for Richie based off the fact that it was written on the board. All right, you're still muted, but we'll go ahead and just move on. It's all right.
Gee, Manelli, I'm so sorry. Richie, Man of Steel, Losers never was going to have a sequel. Man of Steel, Henry Cavill was robbed. We all know that. There's so much interest in him being Superman again. I don't agree with what Zach said about the Batman v Superman was his sequel. No, it wasn't. It was Batman's sequel. So anyway, that's my vote, Richie.
All right, we'll go ahead and put you in the back, and then we will move on to question number 4. So we'll go ahead and bring the competitors back in. And question number 4 is, which romantic comedy from the 2010s should get a sequel? I guess I didn't realize that I technically did 2 of these back to back. That's my bad. Every once in a while, when you write like 8 matches at once, you kind of fuck up and you give the same question twice. But you guys are good sports about it. Usually people are like, hey, dude, that's the same question. It's like, oh, fuck. All right.
Yeah,
you guys were good sports. No. All right. So, yeah, which romantic comedies? Not really a franchised genre. You feel like you can count on your hands like how many got sequels and became franchises. So which should get a sequel? I'm curious to hear these arguments. With that said, Shannon, you're up first, so the timer will start for you when you begin speaking.
Well, when my choice for this question, I kind of went the same as far as the other question. As far as like, I think it's more interesting to like pick a film that's not necessarily a great or well-regarded comedy or romantic comedy, but a comedy that had an interesting idea that wasn't used to its full potential. And so I picked Cheese Out of My League, which I feel like was like a mediocre comedy, but had extremely likable leads in Jay Baruchel and Alex Eve. It dealt with themes such as toxic masculinity and gender dynamics before people fully understood what that was, and it has become more of a prevalent thing in the last decade, for sure, as far as with social media. I feel like a sequel could look at the look at love and the comedic, but it could be with a 2020s like sensibility, and they could do it with the eyes of a teen. The teen does the teen son of the two main characters of it, Eve's characters, and my proposed sequel would be called He's Out of My League, and I will explain more of that in the next round.
And time. All right, Richie, over to you.
All right, it's actually a fun question. I'm going to enjoy debating this. Yeah, I think it's a shame that at the end of the day we haven't got a sequel to one of the more successful films of this decade, which is Bridesmaids. I think Bridesmaids as is room for a sequel here. I think it made stars out of a lot of the cast. But yeah, like there's a lot to tell. Like did what is the update between Chris Wigg's character and Chris O'Dowd? Is there anyone else getting married? Could have that. Maybe it's more about marriage or divorce, or maybe they go. Maybe Melissa McCarthy gets married. There's a lot more you can tap into here, and then I think the comedy here works. I think there's more. There's definitely more room here for a sequel, and I think audiences want to revisit these characters that they climbed under so much, especially considering also so much what comes with big stars.
And time. All right. So it is. I apologize. I believe I didn't pull it up there. It is She's Out of My League versus Bridesmaids. I mean, you heard him, but I didn't pull it up. That's my bad. So with that said, Shannon, we'll go back over to you. You got 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
So yeah, my sequel to She Out of My League, I would call it He's Out of My League. My sequel would suppose that the main characters have a son who has a crush on an older boy in high school, and their son is socially awkward, and his friends believe that he and his crush are from different hierarchies, both socially and physically. It can also focus on his parents trying to help him get his crush in company hijinks ensue. But I feel like by focusing on the LGBTQ plus point of view on the topics in the original, I feel like it's will improve upon the original in every way. Also, you can kick T.G. Miller out and replace him because friends do change in real life, and it would be believable that Baruchel character would dump such a toxic character. Whereas Bridesmaids, it was a comedic sensation, and it elevated specifically that Chris Wigg and Melissa McCarthy became a household name, who was just a great supporting character and for so long, and but made him to movie stars. But you remember the last film that Wigg, McCarthy, and director Paul Feig did together? It was 2016 Ghostbusters, and while I think that movie takes way more shit than it deserved, it proved that the Judd Apatow brand of improv line reading that Bridesmaids did so well had grown stale. And again, really, what first take you put on Bridesmaids? It doesn't sound like a variation of City Slickers to The Legend of Curly's Gold. All these characters had their happy endings, and anything else feels forced and tiring to me. I mean, this feels like retreads of old comedy wells or whatever, as far as cliches about if these characters another wedding, what a novel concept for a movie called Bridesmaids. Just make another wedding and have the same different other movies because The Hangover showed that the increasing the plea of returns as far as milking a premise to death. I mean, so I feel like I would be the biggest problem with the Bridesmaids sequel.
And time. All right, Richie, back over to you. You got 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
Well, I mean, I don't think to be fair, Judd Apatow didn't have anything to do with the Ghostbusters. That Paul Feig's comedy didn't fit within the Ghostbusters sort of universe. But I don't think it's an example of Judd Apatow's shtick running thin. I think it works in this context, and but you could, man. I mean. You could talk about like I said, I'll sort of briefly mention you could bring up maybe divorce. You could maybe put a positive spin on divorce, a female perspective on divorce. I think it's still fresh to have maybe this sort of R-rated comedy, but from a female perspective. Your idea sounds great, but why does it need to be a sequel to season? I like the idea, maybe this awkward kid has a crush on this guy, but that doesn't, I think it'd just be to be a she's. It just feels like it would be a she's Adam League sequel to kind of for name value alone. I don't know why it would need to be a she's Adam League sequel. I'd love it that just to be kind of a standalone thing, and maybe it could branch out into sequels. But yeah, I don't feel like that sort of premise needs to, it could obviously have very similar vibes to She's Out of My League, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to feature any other sort of characters from She's Out of My League. But yeah, like I like that the idea of your film, but I don't know it needs to have that She's Out of the League thing to it. But yeah, Bridesmaid, I just think that there's more, the more connections to characters. I think there's more you can explore. Like the Force, or you can go many ways with it. But yeah, like you could go the Hanger route where you just retread. But I think they've learned from that. I don't think they'll do that. I think Paul Feig's a very smart guy. I think he'd go in a different direction where he might explore divorce. He might explore maybe the idea of just kind of being alone, not having a partner. But yeah, I think there's more ways you can go with it.
And time. All right. We're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion here. The timer starts back up when the first competitor speaks.
Well, I feel like why She's Out of My League was, I mean, again, why that tile goes with this, whatever, because I feel like, again, it was like that was like a focus on a time when people were like it was like certain amount of like men predominantly that would only like say like, oh, like women, like they weren't actually people. They were like just like numbers, or like they were like leagues or whatever. Like they weren't like treated as like actual like human beings or whatever. And that movie kind of like at the end, it's like, that's about what it's about. Like women are human. Like, it's like we're talking about human beings, and you should treat them that way. And I feel like, again, like especially like through a queer eye or whatever, you have to treat like people are people, and like how even now it's still kind of like in high school specifically, it's kind of like hard to be able to like kind of work with them lines as far as like kind of working to understand like that social hierarchy still exists, and it be comedy, we can also like add more to the original, like what that kind of a social statement to it.
Yeah, but would you be using He's on My League, like the title ironically, or because as you said, it's sort of like an out of date kind of term saying that this person's out of my league, where we're all kind of humans. I just sort of, I like the idea of your movie. I just don't know, that like it needs to sort of be a sequel to this overall thing where it can kind of just stand alone as its own movie. Whereas like I don't know if we need to introduce we need to have these other sort of characters. It's sort of, it just feel like maybe it's capitalizing on a normal. On an already established thing, maybe like sort of your similar thing to like when that Mel Gibson movie, what women want, so that they had a what men want thing, which is I have no issue with that movie, but it's like it's like sort of just capitalizing on a kind of already well known movie, just the title alone, where it could just be it's a sort of standalone thing, and I just. Like I feel like with Bridesmaids, like you could go down the route of like, this person from this friend group gets married, and then like you could argue that could be somewhat of a retread, but like I said, you could. I think there's more acceptance of like divorce now. Is that it's not seen as it doesn't have to be seen as like such a sad thing, so maybe. Maybe my Rudolph's character gets divorced, and then it's like it's more of an acceptance for that, and then they.
But I feel like automatically, because we're like I feel like it would be more of a focus on like it'd be like Melissa McCarthy's character, like because she was the breakout like star of that movie. It's focused more on her. Where what worked so well with that was it kind of like distributed more with Kristen Wiig and then with Minor. Whereas I feel like like for where like as far as like Melissa McCarthy, as far as star power, like that they're going to focus more on her, and like I feel like that character is kind of like I feel like I don't know like how much more like you could get from that. I mean, her performance of that character to make it not feel like more of a retread of like the stuff they made kind of like they were like jokes about her or revolved around that character.
That I mean, don't get me wrong. That could be like a studio note to focus on her, because of like studios, like many people like focus on like people have become big stars. But like I think Paul, especially if you get Paul Feig back, obviously that's the optimal thing. I think he'd do a good job of like recognizing that and reining it in. And go, hey, no, like at the end of the day, it's still while it's an ensemble movie, it's still predominantly like a Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph sort of vehicle, and I think Melissa McCarthy would still play a role well in that sort of support. It's a support space. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any sort of concern that should be like this overwhelming presence in the film. I think she'd fit a role pretty well in the sequel, at least my vision of it.
But would they like be able to do anything more? I mean, that linorama, it's not
anti
now.
All right, we're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Shannon, you're up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Again, with I feel like that Bridesmaids came out of a time it's a special kind of comedy, the Judd Apatow like linorama like produced kind of thing. That's now I think most people realize can maybe work more with TV, but like it's TV with the movies, like you have a problem with a movie being too long because people won't delete out like anything that's like this is funny. It's just stay in there. It's like, but comedies work when you can make them more like fluid or whatever. You can't overstuff them, and I feel like a Bridesmaids sequel would have been just more like overstuff and more problems like a lot of comedy sequels have. Where I feel like She League would, again, it would be like a look at modern love, especially through teenage queer love with a comedic lens, and that will elevate past the original. Which I mean, again, a new outlook as far as like something like compare and adding on more to like from what the original did with great comedic performances and stuff that could be added on to it.
All right, that is time. Richie, we'll go back over to you. You have 1 minute left when ready.
I agree that Judd Apatow movies can be overstuffed, but I don't think that was a case of Bridesmaids I think Paul Feig kind of reined that in. I don't think people have that criticism with Bridesmaids, so I don't think you have that worry with here. Your movie sounds brilliant. I'll be there to watch it opening day. But it doesn't. I like the idea, but I yet to hear like a solid reason why there needs to be a sequel. I don't think it. I think it can stand up on its own. It doesn't need to be in it. It doesn't need to have that. It doesn't need to capitalize on an already sort of established film to sort of get people into the theater or streaming or whatever platform decide to distribute on or whatever pitch. But yeah, I just think I think there's more of a but I just think there's just more of clamoring for Bridesmaids. You can still call it Bridesmaids too, even if it is about divorce, because Bridesmaids is how it brought them all together. So, or these characters in our eyes. So, yeah, I think Bridesmaids 2 is makes more sense.
And time. All right. Competitors, thank you guys. We're going to go ahead. Ansich in the back. We'll turn it over to the judges at this point as we'll bring them in. All right. The only real fact check is, while obviously as a producer, he does have creative involvement in his films, it is worth noting because his name was brought up a lot. Judd Apatow is simply just a producer on Bridesmaids. He has a long-term association with Paul Feig. It goes back as far as Freaks and Geeks. Paul Feig was a director on the show, which Judd Apatow was the producer and showrunner for. So they have a long-term association. Apatow did produce the film, however, he did not write it. So at least on a scripting level, he had no involvement in the creation of the film. For what it's worth, neither did Paul Feig. Kristen Wiig wrote the movie. So in that sense, obviously you could argue Feig's directing style is influenced by Apatow, and certainly as a producer, there was some involvement, but since his name was mentioned a lot, he, on a technical capacity in terms of accreditation, did not directly write or direct or have any involvement in that sense in the film. So with that said, Zach, I'll go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I went with Richie on this one. More because he was able to explain that there's multiple ways that you could tell the sequel and dealing with multiple characters compared to what you would get in the other sequel. And just because of that and the variety, that's why I went with Richie.
Okay. Maria, down to you. Who gets your vote?
Richie, he's knocking it out of the park today. Bridesmaids sequels is intriguing. I never even thought of it, and although I listened to with interest to Shannon's, he's out of my league. Is like every woman's thoughts ever. So how would that be funny? Just kidding. He made a good argument, but I really went with Richie because I thought, man, I never even thought about bridesmaids. What about following these guys? See what's next. So anyway, Richie got my vote.
Okay. All right. Judges, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back because your winner by a final score of 3-1 is Richie Goodacre pulling out the victory. Richie, congratulations, sir. Another win. You are on quite a good run here. A 2-win streak, a 3-1, obviously 4-4 record internally, but in the calendar year of 2023, you are 3-1, which is a pretty good turnaround from last year. In fact, it's a complete opposite turnaround from last year, given the 4-4 record. So how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, no, I've obviously improved significantly. And yeah, no, this is good step in the right direction. Wasn't sure how this was going to go because I think Shannon's a really good competitor. Without getting into too many specifics, 2023 hasn't been great to me. So I was like, it's been a bit rough. So I was like, oh, can I focus? And yes, I don't know how prepared I was, but I think I'm able to sort of argue my point more. I'm more confident, and I think it showed. And this is fun. So I'm looking forward to what's next. And I'm pleasantly surprised, but I'm happy with the result.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so with this win, you put yourself right now at that 4-4, that 50-50 record. You put yourself alongside the likes of Zach Shelton or Jeremy Adams, who are at that 50-50 record, who are players that are now in contention to potentially find their way into a lower seed in the tournament, but nothing's confirmed yet. Obviously, everybody knows we record this out of order. That I have an upload schedule, but we record things as we're able to record them. So there's still matches that are pending decision that could affect exactly how many of our 50-50 players get in. Also, based on availability, not everyone's going to be able to commit to the schedule we're going to keep, so people may say no because of that. So certainly there's still a lot of balls up in the air, but in your instance, in your performance, you've done everything you can for yourself to put yourself in a good position here. So how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. If I just miss the cut, that's fine. I can definitely improve. Obviously, always room for improvement, and I think room to grow, and I think I'll be able to achieve that and get it next time. But like either way, I'm pleased with my progression. So I'm happy where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. Of course, making the cut means your opponent's going to be a hell of a lot different opponent next time, but certainly a challenge I'm sure you look forward to. And if you do miss the cut, at least you can take solace in the fact that you've done everything you can for yourself. Sometimes these things just don't shake out in the way that you want them to. So we will see what the future holds for you. Of course, guys, as with last year, there will be announcements of the tournament competitors on the Facebook page. So be on the lookout for who is participating. But with that said, Richie, we'll go ahead and sit you in the back and bring in your opponent in Shannon. Shannon, a good performance. I think definitely some good back and forth debate. I think in terms of, in my mind, how I thought this would work out, I think it did work out in that way with some good discussion back and forth between you guys. Just didn't quite shake out your way. Of course, this is only your second match this year, so that 2-5 is mostly from last season. You've had long breaks in between your last couple of matches just based on availability and things like that. So how are you feeling overall with the performance?
I'm disappointed that I just a little bit as far as this kind of how it turned out. But I applaud Richie. I think he did a very good job as far as I think he did a very good job as far as keeping up with the arguments, and I think he overall was able to sway the judges on the few key rounds and stuff. And I feel like we were, like I feel like it's kind of the same old song on like last one. I feel like a lot of my games kind of just depends on just like kind of like who comes out with like the best argument to the right judge at the end and stuff. So and like I said, that's basically who we're playing to, and this you can satisfy sometimes, and sometimes in my case, there was one judge that we were never on the same wavelength, unfortunately, and I feel like that was might have been the determining factor on that. So, but overall, no, I applaud Richie. I think like it's one of the things with me too. Like you have to more time you do it, and more times with practice that you can be able to kind of get more confident with your arguments and stuff. And I hear him about 2023 has kind of been a tough year for me as well too. And so, but yeah, I applaud Richie, and I really hope that that he can use this to further on with the tournament and do really well.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And of course, we will have you back in the near future once we're able to. Hopefully, at the very least, if you don't have many matches left in the year, you can end the year on a positive note with the next one. But till then, take care of yourself, man. We will see you in the next one. We'll put you guys in the back. And of course, guys, yeah, that is the match. Richie pulling out a win that puts him in a good feeling, in a good position. Unfortunately, Shannon doesn't quite walk away with the win. But again, I think this was a really good, even back and forth match. And I think it shows that, like, obviously, especially at this time of the year, we have a lot of flashy matches with big players, big records. That doesn't always dictate what's going to be the best match. I think, in my taste, the best matches are the most even-keeled matches where the two competitors can go back and forth with each other, and there isn't somebody that's dominating. There isn't somebody that's ruining the sort of feel of the match. And I think these guys were great opponents for each other. I'll pat myself on the back there. And I think they put out a great match that, unfortunately, there's always a winner and there's always a loser, but I hope they both walk away proud of the performance they put in. That said, I want to say thank you to my judges for being here. I appreciate all three of you. Thank you to those of you who watched. Be sure to rate the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around for more Movie Battleground content that releases on a weekly basis as we continue to build towards our tournament, which will begin airing in September. With all that said, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.